Creating new things on the gaming industry usually ends up kind of breaking it. Once you break it, it creates a whole new genre, and I hope you guys can do that here. Fortnite even failed in the beginning. It was like a Minecraft building game.
You built forts to protect yourself at night. That's literally where the name came from. What happened with like PUBG and Epic, there's a lot of litigation still going on around that. I mean, we're looking at an industry where like GTA 6 is going to cost probably over $1 billion to make.
10, 12 years?
It's insane.
Another game that's coming up is Trial Extreme, which to me is, when you think nostalgia.
I remember playing Trials like years ago. Like, that's a very old school franchise. Yeah. Will vibe coding be a thing, yes or no? Being able to make whole games just like prompting through AI. Hey everyone, my name's Marty. You may also know me as Alcatraz. I'm the CEO at Lightning Forge Games, and we are a blockchain and AI-powered gaming studio. So you've seen us do, Forge chats and stuff like that before. A little bit different today. We've actually got some really cool people with us here in San Francisco at GDC, but I'll let you guys introduce yourselves. Because even though you're rocking the LFG hoodies, you're not technically LFG. We'll poach Bam Bam, you don't know that, but yeah.
No, good to be here. Appreciate the invitation. My name is Marco, one of the co-founders at Beam. We'll talk a little bit about more Beam later, but I'll leave it to Daniel to introduce himself as well.
Yeah, guys, I'm Daniel, but my cooler name is Bam Bam. My nickname my mom gave me. I do investments in BD for Beam. Fun fact about me, I've been working since I was 18, so straight up coach from my school. So yeah.
That's the first time I've actually ever known your real name. I've only ever knew you as Bam Bam up till now. So Daniel, nice to meet you.
Oh, nice to meet you too.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, awesome. So, I mean, you obviously mentioned that, founder of Beam. I'd love to know a bit more about that, and also, because I know there's an origin story sort of leading into that. I don't really know anyone who doesn't know who Beam is, but let's assume there's like one person out there who doesn't.
Yeah, so I think explaining Beam, we can start with the origin story and kind of talk about, where we started, how where we're at now. I think, I've personally been in crypto since early 2017, but I've always been a diehard gamer, I would say, more on the casual side. Also games like League of Legends, but also games like RuneScape, where from, a young age, I was always fascinated by in-game economies. And so crypto naturally clicked, and I think it was until 2021-ish, I feel like, where really crypto gaming started to kind of take off, and we were seeing a bigger picture, like, hey, you have those in-game economies that you already know. Now we have games like, initially CryptoKitties, but then Axie Infinity, where you actually start as an economy, see come alive, get volume, get liquidity, and at that point I was like, the game itself, maybe not for me, but the economy with breeding characters and all that, I was like, wow, this is cool, NFTs make sense, so that's something that I want to be involved in. And before that, I've been building communities in Web3, so that kind of came naturally, where I started breeding characters, I started selling them to guilds that started to pop up, that wanted to participate in the ecosystem in a way where, they would buy the characters. It was in the midst of COVID, so a lot of people at home that wanted to play games, earn a little bit on the side, and basically use those characters to enable people to play those games. So that's kind of the origin story. Came around, Axie Infinity, where rather than continuing to sell the characters, I thought, hey, why don't I start a guild on my own? Start working with different players around the world and figure out if there's something here. And there was. So that was kind of where Axie 420, the name was at the time, started. And shortly after, mere months, I would say, it just continued to grow so much to the point where it's like, wow, this is, doing bigger numbers than my own company is on the community side. And I was like, I love gaming, I love crypto, so this is something that I could see myself double down on. And that's where Mark, Tommy, current other co-founders kind of came, to be involved, and they saw a bigger picture too in Web3 gaming and thought, Axie Infinity is cool, play to earn is interesting, but we also see a larger picture where games like, back then, Illuvium, Star Atlas were starting to pop up, start to become popular, and we thought, maybe there's something out here that we could do beyond just, the guild side, beyond just Axie Infinity. So that's where Merit Circle came to life. That's also when Bam Bam, became involved.
Yeah. I started out as just basically being an Axie player. But before that, I played a lot of very economy-based games, right? There's the Habbo Hotel. There's like a basically in-game.
That's old school, bro. Like, yeah.
In Minecraft, I manage servers as well. There's very much microeconomics there. There's also Roblox where, as of today, it's basically one of the biggest in-game trading economies when you think about it. So basically, a bit of money and a bit of gaming has always been in me. So Axie was there, and I was able to join the team and learn from there, yeah.
Yeah, and so just to kind of continue to where Merit Circle towards Beam to explain what is it actually that we're doing nowadays. With Merit Circle, we kind of went back to our roots, which is more on the investment side of things. So we started working with different studios, started funding, started to figure out, okay, how do those studios play a role within the ecosystem, but also how do we play a role within the ecosystem? Because the guild side and the play to earn side, we saw that it's not the most sustainable business if you think about it. The way that at least the game economies were designed back then, and that's to the point where we thought, okay, investments is cool, but we also want to put our stamp on this industry and build something that's going to last and push things forward. That's where the Beam ecosystem kind of came to life, and we figured out of the pain points that we learned from studios that we worked with. There's a lot of things on the infrastructure side that could still see improvements, and I know that abstraction is a really hot, topic and word right now. But back then we immediately said, it's no need to know if there's AWS under the hood for a game. And the same thing should count for blockchain technology, where you want to have all the benefits of blockchain technology with NFTs, with in-game trading, with, well, there's a lot of things we talk about, even token ecosystem search. But as a player, you just want to play those games, you want to enjoy that technology, but not need to know, hey, this is Beam or this is a wallet that you need to connect and sign transactions here and there for single, small actions. That's how Beam came to life. Nowadays, and we'll talk a little bit about that more as well. We started playing in the Avalanche ecosystem as a subnet. Now it's all own L1 with the recent upgrade, but allowed for so much customization and tooling to be built to the point where now you can have a game that wants to have blockchain elements in their game. They hook in with, our SDK. We'll figure out, okay, what do you want that blockchain elements to look like in your game? Maybe you are a game that says, I want to have it a bit more on the forefront, where I do want to see it in my UI, UX. Or you're a game that's just in the App Store, you want to enable people to participate in the economy, but not necessarily know what is Web3, what is a blockchain. I just want to play the game, participate in an economy, and if you realize your assets are now worth money, you can resell it. If you want to quit a game and start something else, well, that's a big benefit right there. Just to scratch kind of the service level, but yeah.
I mean, I know personally, there's a lot more to the Beam story than that. I mean, I've got to do the little self-plug here. So what was the first game to launch on Beam? I can't remember. Can you remember what that game was?
I do know that. I did that investment. It was one of my first ones. It was with a company called Rainy.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, interesting.
You know about them?
Yeah, I mean, their old studio lead was really just handsome, just charismatic. Yeah, I mean, I'm proud to be your first. I know, Beam obviously made a lot of sense for us with Rainy Studios, working on the Lords of Light, because our focus back then was very much on having a very simple UX. We wanted gamers to be able to focus on the game and not have to worry about the blockchain technology, everything that was driving it under the hood. So that partnership back at my previous studio made a lot of sense. And then, obviously you mentioned Avalanche, so I've got to dig into that a little bit. So, I mean, when you were launching Beam, obviously back then it was a subnet, you would have had a lot of options in terms of the tech stack and who you chose to partner with. I'd love to know what dragged you into the Avalanche ecosystem.
Good question. I think for us, we were looking with Beam as side of, first of all, we were thinking chain agnostic makes sense for the overall product suite. But you still want to have your own playground where you can not only get studios in a single ecosystem to also support each other, but also technology-wise, you wanted to figure out how and where are we going to experiment with things. What are the limitations? Where can we have the most customization? And when we started looking at Avalanche subnet, there was obviously DeFi Kingdoms that did really well numbers. They managed to already scale and kind of battle test this whole ecosystem where other chains were thinking about offering a similar approach, but they were still
doing it
early.
So, I think they were the best choice back then. And you see that now today, everyone's launching their own version of subnets, but Avalanche was a year ahead of the time. So it just made sense.
Yeah, and I think also if you just looked at that ecosystem, and that also helped to figure out, why would we want to launch there, and why also in this way is that there were plenty of CEOs who said, hey, I want to have my own environment, I want to have my own tooling and just do everything ourselves. But as you know, launching a game studio, developing a game, it's already so much effort, and that's plenty of work, but also plenty of struggle for studios to work with. So if they also have to spin up their own subnet, or network, L1 now, and they want to have all that tooling. That's a lot of development work to put into an environment for a studio you're not sure is going to succeed yet and doesn't justify revenue-wise or number-wise to already have and take those costs.
Yeah, why reinvent the wheel?
Yeah, why reinvent the wheel?
Work. Yeah, there's vendors too. You have to negotiate with different wallet solutions or like off-ramp, on-ramp, and that adds development time, that adds 6
it takes
to 12
away from the
months
game.
into your runway, yeah.
Yeah, and so we were thinking, with Beam, we could also offer it in the sense of where people could see it as a sort of a stepping stone. So let's say you're a studio that starts out now, you're thinking, hey, maybe we should spin up an Avalanche L1. There's still going to be costs involved there too. Even though it's already made easier than in the beginning, there's already more, parties that have done it. Unless you're a studio, I would say that has raised significant capital to justify wanting to spin up their own environment, why not use Beam? Then figure out what's your product market fit. Is this a game and a title that's actually going to last? Do the numbers we're looking for? And maybe at the point where you're doing plenty of revenue, you're profitable, you could say, hey, now we want to spin up our own environment. And the cool thing I found there, and that was the case with Subnets, it's the case with the L1 now, it all natively communicates with each other. So that means that even though you already have your assets minted on Beam, for example, now you spin up your own environment. All the bridging solutions that are out there that pretty much, cause friction in other environments. Here, that doesn't have to be the case because you can just continue as is. You can even then put, your own L1, your own token as a guest token, whatever you want to do. There's a lot of customization options possible, but it's pretty easy to make that switch. And that's, to me, still today, one of the cooler things to see. And
what's valuable is you get to put your numbers out there on chain, right? Whether it's amount of wallet users or amount of transactions, that helps these games grow traction, whether it's for the next round or it's for the next cycle. And I think that's very helpful.
Yeah, and you asked, because I'm curious to hear from your side too, you asked us, what's the kind of journey been on the whole Avalanche ecosystem side? But I think we could ask the same from you, but then from a studio standpoint of view, how is that kind of development and growth been going on your end, and how is it as a game studio help you in figuring out how do we want to use it? Because you obviously started with Rainy on the Beam side, now you're also thinking, okay, what does the rest of the Avalanche ecosystem look like and work like? So yeah, I'd be curious to hear that too.
So, we've announced it, so LFG obviously will be launching Gladiator Mayhem on Avalanche C-Chain. So we're going to launch on basically Avalanche's version of their core mainnet. The main reason we went down that path, because we were chatting with a bunch of different chains. We had a bunch of offers from different places, but we wanted to go with Avalanche for a couple of reasons. One, we love the community and the ecosystem that AVAX is actively building right now. You look at all the work they do at events like GDC, at events like Token, just building a really great community of builders and gamers, especially. We were chatting to some chains who were like, oh yeah, we'd love to have your games with us. But when we actually dig under the hood, if they don't have an ecosystem of people wanting the products we're building, you're trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. It just doesn't really work. Whereas we know with Avalanche and obviously all the L1s, there is this ravenous community of gamers waiting for really fun games to come in there. And then the other side for us is the fact that the deal we have with Avalanche is obviously we're launching on C-Chain. We've got the ability to move to any L1 or even our own L1 down the road. We really hope with what we're building, especially on the AI side of things, we want to support as many games within the Avalanche ecosystem as possible. We're exclusive to the ecosystem, but not to any one particular chain. So, I would love to work with Beam, for example. If you know who I should chat to, maybe we should talk after this. But we can work with DeFi Kingdoms, we can work with Off the Grid, we can work with Seedon Network. We get to work with this huge range of just super talented studios and teams. And I don't think we would find that sort of ecosystem anywhere else. So yeah, for us, that was the big appeal, being able to work both with this awesome community that Avalanche has spent years sort of building, and then all the L1s sort of falling under that massive umbrella, which is really cool. I guess outside of that, obviously Beam, from its start, and please correct me if I'm wrong here, but I was there at the start, so I think I kind of know how it went. Obviously, early on with Beam, the focus was very much on this amazing UX and bringing awesome games into the system. For anyone who may not have tried any games on Beam, are there any particular games they should be trying out or looking at?
I think Castle of Blackwater is one of our main launches recently. They're gonna do a Steam launch in a couple of weeks. They're gonna
Yep,
do
3 weeks from now.
pretty much a global launch. It's a social deduction game. It's pretty fun. Bit of a spin-off of the social deduction games we know, and Beam Wallet integrates quite seamlessly there. You wouldn't even know you're actually playing a crypto game. So do try it out. Yeah.
So when you say social deduction, we're talking like Among Us, sort of that kind of game. Yeah, cool. I mean, that exploded during COVID. That was insane.
They did well, yeah. I think here you have different factions. You have basically kind of the traders, the good guys, and then you have like a werewolf that comes into the midst of the night and then starts to hunt basically both those sides, which is pretty fun. So then you're kind of the sole person hunting the other people. Yeah, I think that's a good game to as an example.
Yeah,
I think
quite interesting. They're basically like a combination of the two most popular social deduction games in the past decade, like Town of Salem and Among Us, but with way less restrictions than both had, and with the same IP that Salem had. So I think it's going to be a fun time. Have a 2-week run with your friends.
And you said it's going to be on Steam?
It's going to be on Steam.
Yeah, awesome. So can people wishlist it now, or?
They can. So yeah, to continue, I think so. Castle Blackwater is one example of a game that you could be playing, but people like different genres. I think on Beam we have obviously different genres. There's shooters, there's casual games, there's mid-core games.
Yeah.
So it depends on what you like. Another game that's coming out with a broader global launch, actually on Epic Games, is Forgotten Playland. A bunch of people, especially the Apex community, they already have played at GDC last year. It's been kind of in a soft launch mode too, where it's kind of a Mario Party style game, but then more in, I would say, the story vibe. You have those toys, the little plushy bears that are forgotten on the attic. That kind of comes to life. You have all different mini games you can participate in. I think that's a really fun and just casual game to pick up. And what I like there is that in a lot of the Web3 games so far, we saw pretty basic, graphics when it came to it. What I find always shows is if you have a studio that has proper, gaming background and really does their all not to rush out a launch, but really try to polish it and make sure that the graphics are good, the gameplay is smooth. I think that shows, and that's, to me, speaks to the guys from Forgotten Playland. Obviously a little bias there because it is a co-launch studio, so we've been heavily involved. But seeing that come to life from A to Z to a point where now it's getting closer to the point where you have the Web3 implementations, you have the 20 plus mini games you can play, you have some AI bots in there that are going to help to not just fill lobbies but also kind of spice up the gameplay between, am I a bot that wants to really win this mini game, or am I going to just smack the shit out of you because I'm just wanting to be a burden in this round? I think that's pretty fun. And then another game that's coming up is Trial Extreme, which to me is, when you think nostalgia, that game,
I remember playing Trials like years ago. Like, I'm showing my age there a bit, but like that's a very old school franchise.
I think their first title launched 2009. They have a couple 100 million downloads throughout all of those years. And so a title like that coming to Web3, launching with Web3 elements, I think to me is super exciting. But also for us, ecosystem-wise, technology-wise, it's going to be a really good case study for other studios to look at and see, okay, abstraction is a word, but what could it really look like when it actually is in the game? I think that's a really, going to be a good example.
Honestly, they're just good business people. I'm talking from my investment mind, right? Mm-hmm. They just truly know the mobile games business, all the ins and outs, and we don't really see a lot of talent in Web3 as of recent, right? And talking to people like that just, gives me hope, even though we're kind of despair market. So yeah.
Not to, to shill LFG for a second, but yeah, I know as ourselves, like coming from a very long history in like Web2 gaming space, coming across into Web3, it's been really great to be able to bring that skill and expertise we have on the gaming side of things, and then pair it with people like Beam, who can really bring that expertise on how to do the UX of Web3 well. And bring those two worlds together, and show people that there is a lot more to Web3 gaming than cookie clicker style games. We're seeing a lot of tap to plays on like the Telegram space. Obviously in the past we've seen like your Axies and stuff like that. I feel like we're finally moving into this new world of Web3 gaming where they're not. I mean, I don't even like calling it Web3 gaming anymore. They're just games. As I said, it doesn't matter.
Want to get to,
It doesn't matter if there's AWS on the back end. It shouldn't matter if there's blockchain on the back. It should be the focus on the game itself.
Yeah, that's how we feel too. And I think, similar to how maybe Web3 native studios that don't have, really long gaming background think about, hey, I'll just design this really cool Web3, economy, slap a game on top of it. That doesn't work, but at the same time, you also have a lot of Web2 CEOs coming in and thinking, hey, we know how to build a proper game. We'll just, slap this Web3 on top and just leave it at that. Both isn't ideal, both doesn't work, but if you find, those parties to work together and find and combine that talent, I think you can get to the point where it is indeed just games, but it really has this, enhanced player experience with the blockchain elements. We're close.
Yep.
We'll get there. But end of the day, it all comes down to UA, user acquisition, and make sure that those players come in.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's one of the reasons why we co-launch a studio, right? So we basically get perspective into how a game is built from idea to launch, right? So, we just want to learn the whole process there, and not a lot of infra can say that, we know how games are actually built from failure to
no
success.
pain points, no solutions, gaps.
I love that because that's a very traditional model even in Web2 gaming as well. Like you look at Epic, you have to imagine how much experience they now have, how much knowledge they've gained from running a game like Fortnite for years, and even before then, obviously running like Unreal Tournament and all the amazing stuff they've built. Yeah, UT99. That's my old school guilty pleasure, but yeah, like there's
Fortnite even failed in the beginning. It was like a Minecraft building game, but
you built forts to protect yourself at night. That's literally where the name came from. Then there's a really interesting story if you know what happened with like PUBG and Epic. There's a lot of litigation still going on around that. At the end of the day, Fortnite, one of the biggest games in the world, and Unreal Engine is such a beautiful engine to work with because the experience they have actually running, like they're using the tool they create to make games, which is huge.
And for me, what I like most is gaming founders who can reiterate very fast, right? Because game design is always never set in stone. Like you need confirmation. For me, what I look for gaming founders, I ask them, what version of the game is this? If it's like your second, I'm not really too interested, but if it's like your 100th or like, whichever, as long as it's not their first 5 tries, I'm more interested in.
On that topic, actually, because we caught up at Token 2049 in Singapore last year, and you were one of the first people to see what we were actually building, what we were working on, and now you're here at GDC with us, looking at what we have here now.
Yeah.
So this isn't prompted at all, but I'd love to know where you think we're going. How does Gladiator Mayhem look to you?
It's like a different game from what I've seen. I think that was like 6 months ago, which is quite interesting. I played it a bit yesterday in the side event, but I think you guys are in a good step forward. I think this can attract mass, casual audience. I think what's most interesting about your game design is normal retention numbers don't work, right? There's the AFK basis on it. There's even some idle mechanisms, am I right? And that would just look pretty weird into other people's perspectives. But I think you need to really change things up to be able to gather a mass audience.
I'd love to talk more on that because as we've been saying this whole GDC to anyone who will listen to me rant on a microphone, where what we believe we are inventing a new genre of gaming that we call AFK and play. But we'll get to that. But I want to just go back a little bit because you mentioned obviously with Beam, obviously gaming was the initial focus, but I know now AI is sort of growing for you guys as well. So I'd love to know what your plans are in the AI space. And just in general, where you see that going as far as gaming?
Yeah, I think, if you look at Web3, there's always those different narratives. And in the recent Medium post, we put out that, a lot of founders have this shiny object syndrome where they're jumping from one narrative onto another. And we've had the question with Beam too, like, hey guys, you started in gaming as a guild, then you went to the investment side, now the infra side. Now you're talking AI, maybe even RWA was also mentioned, which we're firm believers in. Are you guys just narrative hopping or what is this? To which our answer is very simple. We made our first AI investments back early 2022. And that's before, ChatGPT started to really take off, before people really saw also in gaming, where nowadays it's already pretty common to start using AI for different things. It still was such a vague landscape. We saw and we see a bigger picture there. I think when it comes to AI for us, we're in an ecosystem, we're building infra, we do investments. I think for us it's mainly going to remain on the investment side rather than using AI in our infra per se, because that goes to the game studios. But if you start thinking and talking game studios, what they need for that AI to work and to work with the blockchain elements, obviously very big listeners there to see how we can improve our tech stack. But at the same time, if you think about the game side itself, it's massive. And where I believe last year at GDC we were talking about, so what is AI going to play for a role in game? We were thinking on, maybe the design side, maybe on the level creation side, but now you're seeing kind of the narratives that popped up on AI agents. But I think what's even cooler is if you are in a game, and I'll take RuneScape as an example. I've been playing this game on and off since I'm like 5-6 years old. It's literally how I learned my English. So I think after all those years, 20 plus years, having created so many accounts, having to go through the same quest loop over and over on all those accounts and doing the same quest, it gets really dull. But with AI, you could make it so that you're doing a quest, but that storyline is going to look completely different for you than for another player because your conversations will be different. You might make different choices that may require you to go somewhere completely different on the map than for another player for kind of the same action, basic actions, when you think the overall storyline might be pretty similar. It could give you a complete customized experience. If you think about MMOs, for example, in general, I'll take RuneScape as an example again because it's just closest to my heart and what I experienced firsthand. You have this massive, secondary market, which kind of is a black market, but so you have a lot of botting going on. Yeah. And for a while, for me, the game felt really dead as a normal player because there was just those bots cutting trees, mining ores, not talking back to you when you're talking to someone, or you really didn't see life in the game. Now those bots have some, maybe ChatGPT filters or whatever slapped on top of it. Not only are they making it way harder to detect those bots because their gameplay will be more humane, they're also starting to talk back to you. Yes. So now you have an open world game where there's more players than ever. They're talking back to you. Maybe it's not a real person, but it feels like it's a real person. So player experience wise, it's more fun again to me again. And you could say, oh, is this really what a game should want? Is this really helping the economy? Well, they're buying membership, they're participating in the game economy. Obviously, black market is kind of an issue which blockchain addresses with secondary marketplace fees. But as a player, I do think that's already a good example of where you're starting to see kind of this shift and how this could play a role. And I think that's only going to grow from here. So I think as Beam, a little bit more on the passive side, but when it comes to impact and to the role it's going to play within our ecosystem, pretty massive. Not sure if you want to add on anything onto that, but
no, cool. Good thoughts on it's basically like dynamic game design, right? I think that's quite interesting. But for me, I think more on the development side. I think prompt work on building games just helps the industry as a whole because we see the latest titles having very large budgets. So that makes creating a game startup very difficult when historically gaming has always developed the most because of gaming startups, right? Like from social games to mobile games to free to play. It's never been an incumbent staying an incumbent forever. So we have these supercells and all the like. But now with these insane budgets, how can a startup actually thrive, to create a new gaming environment? And I think AI can help a lot with that, with the prompt work and all the tooling you need to cut down on costs and basically make games easier.
I mean, we're looking at an industry where like GTA 6 is going to cost probably over $1 billion to make.
10, 12 years?
It's insane. I think GTA 5, I think it's Skyrim holds the record for like the most different console generations it's been launched on, but GTA 5 has to be getting up there as well. Like, I played that game back when I had more hair than you. That's not the case anymore, unfortunately. But yeah, no, like I know it's really interesting you talking about like how you were having these sort of conversations at GDC last year.
Yeah.
For anyone who doesn't know, like the actual idea to found Lightning Forge Games started at breakfast with Mark last year at GDC. Yeah. So this is all your fault basically that we're here. And thank you, by the way. But yeah, it was that conversation around like, what AI could potentially do. And we sort of said like, because obviously we've worked with Leonardo and stuff like that. So we had and obviously with Rainy Studios, like we were using AI for, concepting, card art, for like a bunch of different things along those lines. We sort of took it one step further, say, right, what does it actually look like if you build a game that couldn't exist without AI as like a core mechanic?
Yeah.
As we were saying before, like that's where we got to like AFK and play, where, similar to how you're saying like in RuneScape, you've got bots. It's hard to detect because they're using AI. We're like, well, what happens if you actually embrace that concept? You make it easy for players to have their own bots, to customize them. We joke around that LFG bots, or LFG agents, as we call them, need to look, feel, and game just like a human, to the extent where you can't tell them apart from a human player. And at that point, does it actually matter if you're playing a match against a bot or against a human? if it feels identical, it's basically the same thing.
Yeah.
And then it opens up this world where you're talking about having to go chop down trees, or there's always parts of these sort of games that gamers don't enjoy doing themselves. Grinding the battle pass, even playing the early stages of a tournament.
Yeah.
We actually allow LFG agents to jump in and do that for you. We've got some of our developers at the moment, we do little tournaments in-house for testing. So they'll actually put an LFG agent in to play the early rounds. And if they make it to the finals, then they jump in and finish off themselves. So it's presenting this whole new dynamic way of experiencing games. And again, wouldn't be possible without all the stuff that's happening in the AI space, which is really cool.
I think this also opens up a really interesting conversation that we don't have to go full on in depth, right now. But if you think also about revenue and player retention, I'm really wondering, it could be either indeed something where you're like, this is fascinating because now people indeed, they don't have to do that complete grind. But then it also opens up the question of, okay, so what's going to be the hooks that's still going to keep players from coming back, spending time, behind the screen to start caring enough about this game to want to spend money on it?
Yep.
I think that's the whole concept with, indeed, the way you're describing is very interesting, and I think there's going to be a lot of learning lessons there that I'm curious to see. What is that player experience going to look like? What is the player feedback going to look like, as well, when they can skip those things? Because I think a lot of players will love it. There might also be players that say, I liked the grind because that meant that I could achieve something that a lot of people wouldn't, spend the time of the day to achieve. But at the same time, if you're thinking casual game, you don't want to spend hundreds of hours. You have to grind something to get to the point where you can be as good as maybe another player that put in all of those hours. So I think the role is going to differ per genre, how it's going to be embraced. But I think, in your genre, it obviously makes a lot of sense.
We know that we're building in this overarching genre that we call AFK and play. But as we were talking about before, we're building 3 separate games in this space. Because honestly, it's such a new area for us. We don't know what's going to stick and what's going to really have that appeal. So by building Gladiator Mayhem, by building YOLO, by building Grand Tactics Final Order, we're kind of trying to give ourselves as many shots on goal to really figure out where the appeal is for players. We're linking all the games together on the back end, so it's all shared accounts, shared wallets, shared heroes. So if you have a barbarian warrior you really love playing with in Gladiator Mayhem, you can take him across into YOLO, take him across into all the other games. Again, blockchain makes that seamless. It's one of the really cool parts of having that back-end technology available to us. But like we were talking about before we turned the cameras on, the metrics we would look at as a traditional game kind of just go out the window, because all of a sudden, just looking at day
what
one,
do you look at?
day 1, day 7 retention is just so weird. We're even seeing data now in early testing that you show it to mobile publishers and they're like, well, this data looks weird and fake and we can't work out what's actually going on here. Yeah. So, but that's, for us, that's super exciting, because if I can go to some of the biggest mobile publishers in the world and they look at what we're doing and they're like, well, we don't know what's going on here. We're onto something. And I mean, we're kind of betting the whole studio that that's a good thing, but either way, it's a really interesting space to be in at the moment.
Basically, creating new things on the gaming industry usually ends up, kind of breaking it. And once you break it, it creates a whole new genre. And I hope you guys can do that here.
I mean, we're betting the whole studio that we can.
I mean, 3 games already right off the bat. Let's see what does well. Yeah.
But and obviously for us, a big part of our overarching strategy with LFG agents is we don't want to make them just for ourselves. We want to make them available to other games, especially in the Avalanche ecosystem. So again, if you happen to know any L1s that maybe run awesome games that
I can think of one.
You leave comments down below who that might be. I guess outside of that, is there any other things that you guys are working on? Obviously, gaming, AI is a big part of that.
So for us, I mean, largely business as usual, I would say. I know that the markets, are in a tough spot right now, but we also talked about gaming as a industry. Entertainment is only going to be bigger, and you're talking AI. Well, we don't have to go in depth here too, but with AI, ultimately, people, think they will have more free time on their hands, and that should go, naturally towards entertainment. So I think long-term gaming is in a good spot. I still think when you think about blockchain elements and its use case, we talked about AI, we talked about RWA, real-world assets, which is obviously going to see massive growth with, T-bills, continuous, growth there, liquidity, but gaming is still, it makes sense. gamers understand digital economies. They understand why NFTs would matter. They understand naturally how to use it because they already have been doing it for years, except not in a way where it actually enhances their experience and gives back to them. And so I think for us, when we're looking at, what is it that we're working on? I mean, we already talked about, we've been working with so many different studios throughout the years. We talked about the recent L1 upgrade we did, but we also announced the fund that's coming up in Abu Dhabi. And so Abu Dhabi as a scene, it's growing massively as well. It's attracting, they want to grow, so they're putting in a lot of liquidity. They're attracting massive talent, and they're also attracting with that a lot of game studios that are looking to develop a game. I haven't heard of blockchain, technology before, but if you are there on the forefront, you're the first gaming fund, Web3 gaming fund that starts there. You combine this in our case with an accelerator program, where you can really take those studios by the hand, which we've already been doing for years, and figure out with them. You have a game here, you have a game, economy. You know how this stuff works. We've now been to the point where we've been battle testing our technology. We have a goose case study, with Trioxine, for example, to show what does abstraction really look like to the point where a player cannot tell, apart whether it's a regular game or has the blockchain elements on top of it, but they do get the benefits. I think we're going to see a lot of studios that we can start working with and take onto that journey, which is only going to fuel more growth for the Beam ecosystem as well. So I think, for us, what's important is continuing to help studios to hopefully thrive in the blockchain scene. It is continuing to investment and putting our stamp, on the industry in that way. And growing our network and infra and just keep improving it.
Yeah, and for us, it's just mainly navigating the market. Like we might be in a sort of like a down market right now, but in a way that's good because this market moves very fast, but also moves very smartly, right? A scam that works, 2 months ago won't be working now, right? We've seen a lot of people just basically go build a Web3 studio, go hire an outsourcing studio, then launch a game and raise money off of that. That doesn't work nowadays. That's why we see a lot of game studios shutting down. And for us, we're gonna definitely look for studios with more confirmation, right? On like if their game design is actually gonna work, and not just like spray and pray and then launch a token, And that's what's good and bad about it, right? You might lose money with your bags, but it's also good for the industry as a whole because the market realizes, oh, this doesn't work. So what does work, and then they're gonna find out what works in the next cycle.
That's force improvements.
I guess just for anyone who may not be aware, I really kind of want us to stress how big this Abu Dhabi investment actually is. I know, from conversations I've had, they are serious about this. I think they're building an island or something to this isn't just we're gonna make this little token investment.
Yeah, it's not a random side thing. It's there, it's growing, and they're putting money where their mouths are.
I mean, I know that whole region. I was in Dubai for Ton Gateway last year. The whole region is really bullish on gaming in general. Savvy over in Saudi Arabia are doing some amazing stuff.
Great acquisitions.
Speaking of acquisitions, they just bought Niantic. $3.5 billion acquisition. That's there is a lot of really big stuff happening in that region of the world right now. So it's super exciting to see.
That makes sense. I mean, again, going back to the AI side, people are going to have more free time on their hands. Entertainment is, in my opinion, still one of the largest growth markets long term. It's a massive market, sure. You're with gaming also competing obviously against all other forms of entertainment, but sports, if you think stadiums are being bought up now too, soccer teams, all kinds of sports teams, Formula One has seen massive sponsorships. It's because entertainment is continuing to grow and that's where the mindshare is, and so money is going to go there. And so those regions, they're seeing that too. That's why I said they're putting their money where their mouths are, because they're seeing this bigger vision too and this growth trajectory. It's just a matter of time, and with that, finding the right talent, attracting the right talent, and in our case, hopefully working with that talent.
Random question. I just want first gut instinct reaction. Okay, will vibe coding be a thing, yes or no? So being able to make whole games just prompting through AI.
I think for institutions, they will be the first one to use it. But the way I see it, you see it with Roblox, right? You see normal 12-year-olds make $1 million games. You see that in Dress to Impress. So what happens if you don't have to go to Roblox to do that and learn their tooling, but anyone can prompt? What happens when gaming basically becomes a fully open source, low scale market? And I I think that's going to be a thing. Yeah.
I mean, I'm at McDonald's when that happens, but besides that.
Yeah, well, it might, but it still raises the question of prompting comes down to also knowing which prompts to give.
Yeah.
And so you're still going to need expertise, you're still going to need knowledge to figure out what should I actually train this AI model to, or what should I prompt to get to the point where now this is
You know that
a game
people
that
have
people will
businesses
play.
now where they sell a course, or like you go to an online store and they just sell prompts.
Yeah.
Like you put this in GPT-4o and then it's going to
Yeah.
give, make your life better. And they sell the prompt. So, we have that now. What more in the future? Yeah.
Don't tell our head of AI because he'll go and we'll lose him to doing this. But yeah, it's insane to see how much it's changing both like game development, but even being able to generate marketing resources, being able to write scripts. I mean, this isn't scripted obviously, but we probably could have scripted it using ChatGPT. Like we could have used AI for the video and we didn't even need to be here today.
Yeah,
we could still be.
We have an AI podcast that we started releasing the first
Yeah.
episodes like 2 weeks ago. They're having entire conversations around game topics.
Yeah.
And obviously there's still manual input, but those conversations, they're 100% AI. I mean, again, last year we were talking about maybe we're going to start seeing serious uses for designs. Look at what they're already using it for now. I mean, a year from now, sure, there's like this explosive growth. At some point it's going to stop and slow down too. But I think we haven't quite reached that anywhere close yet.
Will we see AGI anytime soon? Is Skynet already here? For all we know, it's
Well, maybe. I mean, sure, even with AI, there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes that we as end users haven't experienced yet. Surely it's further than what we are already experiencing, what they're testing with. But at the same time, as fast as it goes, there are still limitations, be it not even maybe on the model side, it might be on the compute side. So there are still limitations that need to be worked out. I think it's a insane industry, an insane topic, mind-blowing. It's probably the biggest or second biggest, revolution that we ever seen in human life. So yeah, where is this in 10 years from now?
And
I don't know.
from a venture capitalist perspective, AI is basically the hardest industry to bet on.
Yes.
Because you could invest in an AI company now and they lose that moat in 6 months. It's kind of insane. So
Valuations are high.
yeah, that's why you see a lot of people betting more in infra and GPUs, the actual hardware that runs that tech. Because someone could make an AI app and then 2 months ago, AI kind of conquered that AI
Yeah.
app.
I guess, yeah. Were there any final shout outs or anything you want to sort of, mention to the community about anything coming up?
Largely business as usual. I think.
That's a good thing.
That's a good thing. Yeah.
In 2025, if you have business as usual, that's.
I was gonna say, to
Yeah.
some it sounds boring. To us, it's perfect because again, we know we have a bigger vision, we have a bigger picture. We've mapped it out in our Medium posts, in the conversations that we're having. We're building towards that, and we continue to build
For the next
towards
month
that.
or so, we're focusing on our nodes going live. We raised a node sale back in last quarter, did quite well, about 70 million, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
happy to have that news of it in this market. Yeah.
I've got my nodes back home ready to go. I've just got to get around to. I've got to get some free time to actually deploy them and get them all spun up. But yeah, looking forward to that.
Yeah, same here. I think it's been live for about 2 weeks now-ish. I think we have over 150 unique validators live now. Obviously, there are small numbers compared to like 40, 50,000 nodes minted, I believe is the number. But at the same time, documentation out there is still rather limited. I know a lot of people are asking for, hey, can you create some videos on how to set up those nodes? I think the nice thing here is you have validation, you have delegation. Even if you're not very technical, there's ways to participate, be it on the delegation side or a node as a service where you have a third-party provider that kind of runs the hardware side for you. But yeah, it still requires technical knowledge. I think maybe long-term their AI can play a role to make that way easier, for people to spin up the nodes. But that is to us very exciting. And I think other than that, definitely want to thank you for inviting us to have this chat.
And for the bagels, yeah.
For the bagels.
I mean, it's coffee and bagels. That's what we do.
That's always good. But yeah, it's fun to also just follow your journey in the game development side, in the Web3 side. I think, shout out to the Avalanche folks, obviously, for continuing to push, the technology forward too. I mean, we're very happy to now have the whole L1 network. Just allows for even more customization than was possible with the subnets. So there too, we're really curious to see where this environment is going to go throughout the next year. I think there's a lot of games that are starting to launch not MVP versions, but also full versions of the game, where we're in an interesting landscape. And again, sentiment might be down, but I think development is continuing as is, and it's getting closer to a point where we're starting to see some exciting things.
I'm just happy to see games launch, though. Whether they fail or not, I'd rather see a lot of failed games at launch instead of a lot of failed game studios that we
Never
haven't
launched.
seen.
That didn't make it, yeah. As I said, it's unfortunate at the moment. It is a rough time for the gaming industry in general. Yeah. And as I said before, that's Web 2 and Web 3 across the board. But yeah, it definitely means we need to celebrate the successes when we have them. And yeah, like high tides raise all ships. Any new games coming out at the moment is a great thing. And definitely with all the games, on Beam, Trials, I'm so looking forward to that. I'm going to be smashing those. I'm going to start.
You're going to up those retention numbers.
Yeah.
I'm going to train an AI, and that AI will smash the leaderboard. So yeah, we have a tradition. We end every podcast by saying LFG.
All right.
Because we named the studio, we have to kind of do it. So LFG.
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 Let's fucking go.
Let's fucking go. Thank you everyone for tuning in, and we'll catch you on the next video that we put out. Have a great day, everyone.